Welcome to the deep dive. You, our learner, have sent us down the rabbit hole of Death Stranding lore. We've got your detailed report, and our mission is simple. Extract the essential knowledge about this fascinating world in a way that's thorough, engaging, and packed with those aha moments you're looking for, all while respecting your time.
And what a world it is. Death Stranding isn't just a game. It's a tapestry woven with unique concepts, and understanding its lore is really key to unlocking its deeper meanings.
Exactly. Kojima himself called it a strand game, highlighting how social connection isn't just, a mechanic, it's the very heart of the narrative.
And with his 70% film approach, there are layers here, things that speak to our own anxieties, right?
Absolutely. So we're going to unpack the cataclysm that started it all, the strange supernatural phenomena, the driving forces behind the story, the key players and their histories, the factions vying for influence, and the underlying ideas that give it all its weight.
Sounds good. Where should we begin?
Let's plunge right in, shall we? Starting with the foundational event, the one that gave the game its name, the Death Stranding.
Right. And it wasn't like a single explosion or something. It was more a cascade of world-altering occurrences that just blurred the boundaries between life and death.
Yeah, imagine the natural order itself just fracturing.
It wasn't just a bad storm, like you said. Suddenly you have ghostly apparitions everywhere.
BTs, right. Beach things, these echoes of the departed.
Yeah, and weird new forms of matter appearing, like Haralium, this almost mystical particle that seems to rewrite the rules of physics.
And then there's timefall, that rain that literally ages everything it touches. A fundamental shift in reality.
What's particularly striking, though, is the event that seems to have kicked it all off. The report points to Emily.
Who we'll get into more later, the extinction entity.
Right. Her repatriating baby Sam after he was killed by Bridget Strand.
And Bridget and Emily, that's a whole complex thing in itself. Two sides of the same coin almost.
Exactly. And this act of bringing Sam back, this sort of complicated, tragic love, that's what seems to have ripped open the pathways between the living and the dead.
So a deeply personal moment causes this massive global catastrophe.
Yeah. The immediate fallout was huge. Infrastructure crumbled. Nations just fractured.
Leading to the end of the old USA and the rise of the UCA, the United Cities of America, which itself is just this patchwork of isolated settlements.
Survivors retreated underground into not cities or into these remote prepper shelters, just trying to escape the new threats.
And in that chaos, the porters emerged.
They became absolutely vital. The literal lifelines, braving these insane dangers to deliver supplies.
And crucially for the story, trying to reconnect everyone.
Yeah, it becomes clear pretty fast that the entire societal structure, even the core gameplay of making deliveries, it's all a direct result of the Death Stranding.
Okay, let's dig into one of those threats a bit more. Timefall. It's everywhere in the game.
Yeah, rain and snow, but it's infused with that Haralium.
Yeah.
And the effect is, well, terrifying. Accelerated aging on contact.
Imagine just walking outside being that dangerous.
What's interesting is how the Haralium seems to destabilize on impact. So standing water, like puddles or lakes, is safe.
Okay.
But direct exposure, that's where the rapid aging kicks in. The report gives that really powerful example with Fragile.
Oh, right. Her body was aged drastically, except her face, because it was covered.
Exactly. All because she spent too long exposed while saving South Knot City. It's just a stark reminder of the personal cost.
A truly selfless act. And it mainly affects exposed surfaces. Yeah. It's not like your insides age faster.
Right. Primarily exposed surfaces. But it also messes with inanimate objects. Cargo degrades. Vehicles fall apart quicker.
Making every delivery a race against time.
And yet, in this bizarre twist, the report mentions timefall actually accelerates crop growth at timefall farms.
Seriously?
Yeah. It just shows how fundamentally the natural order is broken, creating these strange new rules.
Okay, so we have the cataclysm, the weird weather. Now, the spectral inhabitants, beach things, BTs, what's the deal with them?
So the report makes it clear they aren't your standard ghosts. They're manifestations of the dead, specifically the Ka, the soul, basically.
Yeah.
And it gets stranded on their personal beach, this sort of limbo space. They can't fully move on to the afterlife, so they're tethered to the living world, the Ha.
Like metaphysical unfinished business?
Pretty much. And there's this grim process called necrosis.
Right. The 48-hour rule. If a corpse isn't incinerated...
It decays in this specific way that sums a BT. So corpse disposal becomes this critical survival necessity.
It really changes everything, even how you handle death.
Absolutely. And the idea that PTs might not be inherently evil, but are maybe seeking connection. That's fascinating.
But their interaction with our world is catastrophic, like matter and antimatter.
Sort of, yeah. That's the analogy used. And apparently when you sever their umbilical cord, you get a like, which suggests this. Confused yearning, maybe?
So lost souls, not just monsters. The report breaks down different types, too. Gazers first.
Yeah, gazers. They look like shimmering, floating figures, mostly passive unless you alert them.
Their main threat is calling in the nastier ones.
Exactly. They sense you and alert others, often found where there's timefall.
Then hunters. They sound worse. Tar handprints, grasping bodies pulling you down.
That's them. Once they spot you, they're relentless. Getting dragged into the tar is bad news. They're definitely more actively hostile.
And the big ones, catchers. Massive, made of tar and chiral stuff. The boss types.
Absolutely the ones you want to avoid. Super aggressive. And they're the ones that cause voidouts.
Ah, the voidouts. If a catcher consumes a living person, boom.
Basically, yeah. An antimatter-like explosion that leaves a permanent crater totally reshapes the landscape.
Yeah.
Devastating.
Wow. The report also mentions animal BTs. That's weird. Animals aren't supposed to have beaches, right?
That's what makes it intriguing. It raises questions about how far this phenomenon reaches. Is it just humans, or is the whole ecosystem twisted? We don't fully know their origin.
And the voidouts are this constant reminder of how messed up the cycle of life and death has become.
Precisely. A total perversion of the natural order.
Okay, so disaster fallout. Let's get into the rules of this broken reality, starting with the beach and the seam. Sounds key to the afterlife here.
Definite key. The beach is this. Liminal space.
Yeah.
Often unique to each person, kind of a personal halfway point you might hit in your death.
Before the Death Stranding, it was maybe a smoother transition point.
Probably.
Yeah.
But now souls get stuck there, stranded on their beaches, unable to move on.
Yeah.
And that's what leads to BTs appearing in our world.
And the look of a beach can change based on the person's mind. That's wild.
It really speaks to how personal and subjective this whole realm is. And then connecting all of that is the seam.
The seam, like a vast ocean.
Yeah, an encompassing ocean that connects the living, the dead, and all the individual beaches. It's where repatriates, like Sam, can swim back to life from after they die.
But Emeli's beach, that's different, isn't it? Special somehow.
Very different. It's described as a unique, sort of higher dimensional space, a nexus point connected to all other beaches, like a control center for the afterlife's corrupted state.
And that's fundamental to her power as the extinction entity.
Exactly. And here's the really unsettling part the report highlights. Expanding the chiral network, the very thing Sam is doing to reconnect America,
Yeah.
actually strengthens the connection to Emeli's beach. It inadvertently helps her apocalyptic plan.
Oh, man, the irony. A tool for salvation, paving the way for destruction.
It crops up again and again,
Yeah.
this duality, which brings us nice to dooms.
Right, dooms, quite a name. This rare condition giving people supernatural abilities related to BTs and the beach.
But it's not just a cool power-up. It often comes linked with anxiety, phobias. It's a real burden for many.
A burden and a gift, and it varies in strength, right? Levels.
Yeah, described in levels. Sam, for example, is level 2. He can sense BTs.
Right.
You see his skin react. But he needs a bridge baby, a BB, to actually see them.
And he has a chiral allergy, too, the tears near BTs.
And of course, his repatriation ability is tied into his unique situation. The report also mentions this ominous extinction factor linked to his dooms.
Suggesting a deeper tie to the whole extinction entity cycle. And maybe his fear of touch, aphasmophobia, is part of it too, from trauma or the supernatural stuff.
Highly likely. These abilities manifest in really personal ways. Trauma definitely leaves its mark, physically and metaphysically. Then you've got fragile.
Higher level dooms. She can see BTs without a BB.
Right. And crucially, she can teleport herself and others using her own personal beach, which is how fast travel works in the game.
Plus the chiral allergy and the timefall aging, of course.
And then there's Higgs. His dunes level seems off the charts.
Oh, controls timefall, BTs, teleports, telekinesis, creates chiral matter.
Wow.
Yeah.
He might even be a repatriate. His powers make him incredibly dangerous. And his name, Higgs, like the Higgs boson.
The God particle fits his ego, and Emily boosts his powers.
Seems that way. Empowers him to be her agent. The report also mentions Mama and Lockney having dooms.
The telepathic communication and Mama's tragic link to her BT baby suggests their shared soul, their Ka and beach, are linked to their powers.
And they were key chiral network designers, too. Their connection really highlights how personal experience and these abilities intertwine.
And the story about Lucy, Sam's wife, developing Doom's nightmares from his blood during pregnancy, that's chilling. Shows it can be transferred or triggered somehow.
A really dark side to these abilities. And yeah, the report throws in that bit about birth constellations maybe having a minor link, but it feels more like a lore detail, an Easter egg.
Adds a bit of cosmic mystery. Okay, this leads us to one of the most unsettling parts. Bridge babies. BBs.
Yeah. Premature infants kept in these pods simulating a still mother's womb.
And still mothers are. Brain-dead women on life support, their wombs somehow bridging to the dead. That's incredibly dark.
It is. The report says the early, ethically dubious experiments involving Sam himself as a baby revealed their unique ability. They let porters sense BTs.
They're like living conduits to the other side.
Exactly. But they need regular synchronization via the chiral network with their still mothers. Otherwise, they get stressed, autotoxemia sets in.
And high stress means they don't detect BTs as well, hence the soothing, the rocking.
And tragically, their operational lifespan is short, under a year usually.
Which makes dead men calling them equipment feel even colder.
Right. But the emotional bonds that form, especially between Sam and Lou, that becomes so central. It explores parenthood, connection, despite the world being what it is.
Definitely challenges that equipment view.
Yeah.
Okay, next up, repatriation. The ability to come back from death.
Sam's defining trait, arguably. When he dies, his consciousness goes to the seam.
That ocean connecting everything.
And he can return to his body. Even if the body's vaporized in a void out, it reforms on his beach, ready for him to come back.
But crucially, repatriates can still cause void outs if a catcher kills them, so death still has huge consequences.
Precisely. And here's the massive lore drop. Sam's repatriation isn't natural. It was given to him by Emily.
When he was a baby. After Bridget shot him and his father, Cliff.
Exactly. During Cliff's rescue attempt from the BP experiments, Amelie found baby Sam on her beach, healed him, and sent him back.
And the report says that act is what might have triggered or accelerated the whole Death Stranding.
That's the theory. His survival is paradoxically linked to the apocalypse itself. The layers are just, wow.
Incredible. Okay, this leads us to the tech side, the chiral network. The UCA's big project.
Yeah, the backbone of their reunification effort. Think of it like a new internet, using the beach and Corallium for instant communication and data transfer across the country.
Conceived by Bridges, with Mama and Lockney being key architects.
And Sam's main mission is basically expanding this network, node by node, east to west, using that Cupid necklace at the terminals.
But it's not always straightforward, right? You have to earn trust sometimes.
Definitely. Build bridges, literally and figuratively. But the benefits are huge once a place is connected. Updated maps, points of interest revealed.
And access to the chiral printers, which let you fabricate gear, structures, essential stuff.
And then there's the asynchronous multiplayer aspect, seeing structures and signs left by other players.
That really nails the Strand game idea, indirect connection.
But, like always, there's a darker side. The report mentions Bridget's early ideas involved integrating BBs somehow.
Oh, unsettling.
And more critically, the fully expanded network is key to Amelie's plan as the extinction entity. Connecting all beaches to hers gives her the power for the last stranding.
So the very tool meant to save America could destroy the world. The duality again.
It's everywhere. A symbol of hope that enables annihilation, perfectly captures the precariousness of it all. Which brings us to the architects of that potential annihilation, the extinction entities.
Right, the EEs. These beings whose whole purpose is to kick off mass extinctions, the bridge for each Death Stranding. Their existence alone starts the process.
And Hartman's theory is fascinating here, linking the 5 big paleontological mass extinctions, the Big Five, to 5 previous EEs.
Puts the current crisis in this vast cosmic timeline. And they found remnants of these past EEs. No decay, umbilical cords.
Yeah, connecting them visually and thematically to the current events. And those 5 spooky figures, sometimes seen in the sky, believed to represent those past EEs.
But the report suggests they might have some choice, that previous EEs maybe didn't go through with total extinction because they formed attachments.
It hints at agency, maybe even empathy, which really complicates things. Are they just cosmic functions or something more?
So maybe not just pure destruction. And the idea that each Death Stranding clears the way for new life, it frames them as part of this terrifying cycle of death and rebirth.
The stick that clears the way, but maybe holds the potential for the rope of new beginnings, as Kojima might put it.
Which brings us to the current EE, Melly Strand, the reluctant harbinger of the last stranding.
Reluctant is key. The report explains her true nature. She's the Ka, the soul of Bridget Strand, separated after Bridget's cancer surgery years ago.
So Amelie exists agelessly on her special beach, while Bridget lived and aged normally as the president.
Exactly, and Amelie's name, Amen Lai, hints at that dual nature, destined but deceptive. Her motivations are incredibly conflicted.
She pushes Sam to complete the chiral network, believing the last stranding is this inevitable, maybe even merciful correction for humanity.
But underneath, she has this profound longing for connection, especially with Sam, the baby she saved.
And seeing his efforts to connect people, that's what changes her mind at the end.
It seems so. Her choice to delay the last stranding by isolating herself and her beach shows that even cosmic fate can be swayed by human connection, by love.
And the irony again, Sam's repatriation, which helped cause the mess, is also key to pausing it.
It's all tangled together. And that recurring umbilical cord symbol, EEs, BTs, BBs, just emphasizes these complex metaphysical tethers.
Okay, let's dive into the people caught up in all this, starting with the man himself, Sam Porter Bridges.
Sam's backstory is a lot. Born Sam Unger, son of Clifford Unger and Lisa Bridges. Early life trauma. One of the first BBs in those Bridges experiments.
Then his dad tries to rescue him, both get killed by Bridget Strand, but Amelie brings baby Sam back as a repatriate. Wow.
Then later, he's a porter, but his pregnant wife Lucy develops Doom's nightmares, likely worsened by Sam's presence.
Leading to her suicide and a void out, leaving Sam totally isolated, afraid of touch, that aphanphasmophobia.
Yeah. His past is just woven through with BBs, repatriation, void outs, EEs, the very start of the Death Stranding. He carries so much baggage, literal and metaphorical.
His dooms is level 2, senses BTs, needs Lou to see them, chiral allergy, the repatriation from Emily,
Wow.
and that mysterious extinction factor.
And initially, he's so reluctant. Just making deliveries is his mantra. He's doing it out of obligation to Bridget, to Emily, concern for Lou.
But the journey changes him, seeing the impact, meeting people. He starts wanting to make America whole.
And that bond with Lou becomes everything, his anchor, pushing him to face his fears.
His relationships are so complex, too. Adopted son of Bridget, adoptive brother to Amelie, biological son of Cliff, which he finds out later.
Right. Plus his working relationships with fragile dead man, Hartman, diehard men. They all shape him.
Yeah.
His arc is huge, from isolation and maybe misanthropy.
To being the bridge, literally. Starts fearing touch, ends up a symbol of hope, choosing connection.
And his actions directly sway Emily, his final choice to save Lou, raise her as Louise. That's him embracing life, love, ending his own personal Death Stranding.
He's way more than just a delivery guy. Okay, let's unpack Amelie and Bridget Strand more. That duality.
Two sides of one coin, really. Bridget, the physical body, the Ha, first female UCA president.
Amelie?
Her Ka, the soul, ageless entity on that higher dimensional beach nexus.
Separated after Bridget's cancer surgery. And Amelie is the current extinction entity, Amen Lai. Sacred but deceptive.
Bridget, as president, publicly pushed for reunification, but secretly guided Bridges, including the early BB experiments with baby Sam.
Her motives were tangled. Genuine desire to save people, but also tied to Amelie's E agenda.
Seems like it. And her shooting Cliff and baby Sam, pivotal, tragic, set so much in motion. A figure of power and contradiction, life-saving attempts tied to death.
While Amelie's main goal, as the EE, is the last stranding, sees it as a necessary correction. The chiral network is her tool.
But she's conflicted. Wants connection, especially with Sam, who she saved but also burdened. Used Higgs as her agent, guided Sam subtly.
Until Sam's actions convince her to delay it all, choosing isolation.
Their bond with Sam is the emotional core. Adoptive sister, source of his powers, savior and potential destroyer. Higgs was just a tool for her, really.
They're the prime movers. Their nature, their choices, shaped everything. Initiated the crisis, created Sam's situation, held the world's fate.
Then there's Higgs Monahan, the guy in the gold mask.
Traumatic past, right. Orphaned, abused, killed his uncle in self-defense, then powerful dooms manifested.
Yeah. Initially tried to use his powers for good. As a porter, even partnered with Fragile, which makes his turn so much more tragic.
His doom's powers are top tier. Controls timefall, BTs, teleports, telekinesis, chiral creation, maybe repatriate too. Higgs boson name?
Very fitting. But meeting Amelie changed everything. Seduced by her power, the last stranding revelation, he became her willing agent of extinction.
Embraced nihilism. Believed extinction was inevitable, desirable even. Wanted to speed it up.
Driven by that conviction, desire for power, and just performative villainy, leading homodemons, the militant separatists.
Opposed the UCA, terrorized people, caused void-outs on purpose. Followers had those Egyptian motifs reflecting his god complex.
Ultimately, Sam beats him. Fragile spares him but sends him to Amelie's beach. An ironic end. He's the dark mirror to Sam, right? Shaped by the Stranding, amazing powers, but chose destruction.
Definitely. Okay, Fragile, head of Fragile Express. Teleporting courier marked by timefall.
Determined woman. Inherited the company, Porter tradition runs deep. Her mother, Coffin, abandoned them, became a terrorist, mentored Higgs. Complicated family.
Merged with Higgs early on for strength, not knowing his real plans.
And then Higgs betrayed her massively. Tricked her into delivering the nuke that destroyed Middle Knot City.
Horrifying. And she tried to stop him doing the same to South Knot City. That's when the timefall exposure happened.
Yeah. Captured, forced to carry the bomb through severe timefall without gear. Chose that over the city's destruction. Aged her whole body except her face. Sorts of her look, her drive for revenge.
But she becomes such a key ally for Sam. Offers teleportation, intel, support. Despite everything, she still believes in connection.
I'm fragile, but I'm not that fragile. That line sums her up. Her resilience is incredible.
More than just support, she enables Sam's journey, a symbol of survival. Her fight with Higgs is a major part of the story. Really shows the personal cost.
Then there's Clifford Unger, the spectral soldier chasing his lost son.
Decorated captain before it all went down, married to Lisa Bridges, Sam's father. Then Lisa ends up brain dead, unborn Sam taken for the BB program. Tragedy.
His entire motivation becomes rescuing his son. That desperate paternal love fuels his spectral appearances, his hunt for the BB he thinks is his.
And his beach manifests as those war zones. WWI, WWII, Vietnam, populated by skeleton soldiers.
Yeah. After Bridget E. Hardman killed him during the escape attempt, his spirit got tethered there. Amelie used these nightmares to help adult Sam understand his past, his father's love, personalized purgatories for Cliff's grief.
Until the end, when he realizes Lou isn't his son, but adult Sam is.
That's the emotional climax. Flashbacks reveal his love, Lisa's fate, his death. Realizing Sam is his bridge to the future, he finds peace, gives Sam his dog tags. Let's go.
So moving. Crucial backstory for Sam. Powerful theme of love beyond death.
Absolutely. Now, the key player is inside Bridges itself. Die Hardman first.
The masked director, later president, real name John McClane, served under Cliff in the army. Cliff saved him repeatedly, hence the loyalty.
But also fiercely loyal to Bridget. Maybe loved her, respected her deeply. Led to that awful conflict when ordered to help kill Cliff.
The trauma, the guilt, Bridget forcing his hand, led to the mask, the name Die Hardman, hiding his shame. Defined by those conflicting loyalties, Bridges' secrets.
Then Dead Man. Bridges' medical research guy. BB's, a Carolium expert.
With that unique origin. Artificial human. Frankenstein's monster from cadaver parts. Laxa Beach, a caw.
Yeah. An outsider to life and death. Initially sees BBs like Lou as just equipment. Warns Sam against attachment.
But he softens up, starts to understand the human connection, especially Sam and Lou. Shows empathy later on.
He does. His perspective evolves, leading to some compassionate actions regarding Lou's fate near the end.
And finally the twins, Mama Mulligan and Lockney.
Pivotal tech gurus. Chiral network architects. Mama did hardware, Lockney software. Born conjoined, separated, but share one Ka, one beach, giving them a telepathic link.
But tragedy struck. Mama was a surrogate for Lockney. Baby died in an attack, became a BT, tethered just to Mama.
Right. Kept Mama physically alive, but trapped her. Severed the psychic link with Lockney, caused this painful estrangement.
Until Sam intervenes, severs the tie to the BT baby, which leads to Mama's physical death.
But allows her cake to finally reunite fully with Lockney. You see, physically, Lockney gets one blue eye, one green eye. Their souls rejoined.
Wow. A story about sisterhood, sacrifice, identity, connection on a whole metaphysical level. And then there's Hartman.
The dedicated Bridges researcher, expert on everything Death Stranding, beaches, BTs, EEs. His obsession is personal.
Right. His wife and daughter died in a void out while he was having heart surgery. Briefly saw them on his beach before being revived.
Exactly. So he lives in these 21-minute cycles. Stops his heart, spends 3 minutes on his beach searching for them. AED brings him back. Hundreds of thousands of times.
That level of grief fueling his research. He explains a lot of the lore for the player, for you.
And his arc ends with him deciding to let go of the search, embrace new connections. Another move from grief towards hope.
It's amazing how all these stories interlock. So many layers.
Yeah. And notice how many wear masks. Die Hard Men, Higgs,
Yeah.
even Fragile's face covering, speaks volumes about hidden identities, burdens, truths beneath the surface.
Okay, let's zoom out a bit to the bigger players. Factions and philosophies. UCA and Bridges first.
The UCA, successor to the USA. Goal: make America whole again via the chiral network. Led by Bridget, then Die Hardman. Rhetoric echoes Manifest Destiny almost.
But not everyone's on board initially. Preppers, some cities are skeptical, fear losing independence.
Exactly. Wary of centralized control again. And Bridges is the operational arm making it happen. Founded by Bridget. Quasi-governmental. Network expansion, research, coordinating porters.
Key figures we talked about are all Bridges. The spiderweb logo over the U.S. map, very symbolic. And the sequel hints their role might change.
Seems like it. Then you have the opposition. Homo demons, militant separatists, mainly around Edge, not City.
Their goal is independence, opposing UCA central power. Decentralized cells, all anti-UCA.
But the main faction, led by Higgs, goes way beyond separatism. They align with MLE's apocalypse plan. Want to speed up the last stranding.
Using terror, attacking porters, triggering void outs, brutal methods, plus Higgs' Doom's powers make them super dangerous, and those Egyptian motifs.
Reflecting his god complex, his link to MLE. They're the embodiment of isolation and destruction, fighting against connection.
And then, caught in the middle, are the porters.
More than delivery guys, like we said. They're the literal sinews holding society together. Braving everything, timefall, BTs, MULEs, terrorists.
Carrying essentials, data, even corpses, connecting the isolated dots. Literal and metaphorical strands. Indispensable.
Their life is constant danger, but offers purpose. Motivations vary: survival, duty, camaraderie. Generally heroes, but not always treated that way.
They really embody that theme of connection through action. Individual efforts rebuilding the world one delivery at a time. Quiet heroes offering hope.
The report also mentions MULEs, different from homo demons.
Right. Maniacal, unscrupulous luggage extremists. Former porters addicted to delivering, hoarding cargo. Maybe chiral contamination messed them up.
Seems like it. Not ideological like homo demons, just territorial, obsessive. Attack porters to steal packages out of compulsion. A different kind of breakdown the porter ethos twisted into addiction.
Plus other bandits out there too. Shows the lawlessness outside UCA zones.
So the UCA's vision faces challenges from the supernatural and from human groups with totally different ideas. Higgs and nihilism, MULE's obsession, prepper independence. Porters navigate all of it, trying to weave connections amidst chaos.
Okay, finally, let's get into Kojima's head a bit. The inspirations and themes. Starting with that stick-in-the-rope idea.
Yeah, this core philosophy he credits to Kobe Abe. The stick, early tool for defense, separation, aggression. The rope tool for securing, connecting.
And Kojima says most action games focus on the stick. Death Stranding aims to be a strand game, emphasizing the rope.
Which you see in the deliveries, the network building, the asynchronous multiplayer helping each other out.
But the game still has the stick, right? Combat against BTs, MULEs, terrorists. Even Sam's bodily fluids as weapons blur the lines.
Definitely. But the consequences of using the stick, especially lethal force on humans needing to incinerate bodies to prevent void outs, are heavily stressed.
So that tension between stick and rope is central. Even the E's embody an ultimate stick of annihilation, but capable of ropes of attachment.
Then the big theme, connection versus isolation.
Which hit differently after the pandemic, didn't it? Lockdowns, relying on deliveries, digital connection.
Uncanny resonance. But Kojima was already thinking about growing global division, Brexit, things like that.
Yeah.
Now for the sequel, he's apparently thinking about the dangers of too much connection, or the wrong kind, losing face-to-face interaction.
And his own experience leaving Konami, feeling alone, then realizing the importance of connections, that influenced it too.
Absolutely. The game also has this totally unique metaphysics. Life and death boundaries blurring is the whole starting point.
The beach as personal purgatory, the seam connecting everything, necrosis, repatriation. It's a vision of the afterlife tangled with the living world.
Exploring Ka, soul, and Ha, body, echoes of Egyptian ideas. Distinct but connected. Power of names, memory. Even death mechanics aren't just game over. They're part of the story, part of Sam. Oh.
And amidst all the epic sci-fi weirdness, the report emphasizes the human core. Parenthood, grief, hope.
Sam Alu's bond is the heart. Reluctant parenthood, unexpected connection, protecting the future. Cliffhunker's story, tragic paternal love, loss, finding peace. Hartman's cycles of grief, eventually choosing life and new connections.
These stories show resilience, the search for meaning, even facing extinction.
The report also notes the scientific and mythological influences mixed in.
Not hard science, but resonances. Chiralium timeless, extra-dimensional feels like quantum physics ideas, dark matter maybe, ecological disaster timefall, void outs mirrors environmental concerns.
Consciousness, soul, afterlife. Touches on philosophy, parapsychology. Mythologically, Abe, Egyptian Kaha, the seam beaches as underworld journeys, ease and extinction cycles like cosmic creation-destruction myths. Ameli's name, her powers.
Lots of layers, and being Kojima, cinema is huge.
Oh, yeah. His filmmaker identity is all over it. Visuals, pacing, casting film actors and directors.
The report lists fan comparisons. Akira, Aliens, The Postman, Princess Mononoke, Stalker, Wages of Fear, Inception, Interstellar.
They all feed into that distinctive atmosphere. Desolate but beautiful, terrifying but hopeful. It's a synthesis of so many things, creating this unique lore.
So wrapping this up, the lore is this vast, intricate web. Cataclysm, supernatural stuff, character motives, philosophy, all woven together.
And right at the center, that human need for connection in a world pushing isolation. The Death Stranding is like a test for humanity, forcing us to face big questions.
We covered timefall, BTs, beaches, and how people responded. Dooms, repatriation, the chiral network.
And seeing how the characters' fates are linked really drives home how individual actions matter. The factions show different ways societies react to collapse.
And Kojima's stick and rope idea challenges you, the listener, to think about how we interact. Are we building bridges or walls?
Ultimately, Death Stranding leaves you thinking about loss, parenthood, rebuilding, our fragile planet, and the paradox of connection. How vital but complicated it is.
Which brings us to a final thought for you, our learner. In a world like ours, needing both self-preservation and interdependence, how do we balance that need for the protective stick with the power of the connecting rope?
And in the long run, is one ultimately more vital, not just for survival, but for finding meaning in it all, something to ponder